Crank up the volume and get ready for real-world bird hunting by listening to the Wingmen podcast by Eastmans. Now your host, Todd Helms.
This episode of the Wingmen podcast is brought to you by Cryptek. You know, guys, camouflage and quality hunting garments and apparel are vitally important to success in the field. You want to be out there when you want to be out there and for as long as you want to be out there. And you need high quality garments and clothing and gear that's going to keep you concealed at the same time. You know, Cryptek's variety of camouflage patterns and the offerings of apparel that they bring to market are second to none. I love being partnered with that company. I love the shared ethos that we have. I love the shared values that we have. And I'm super proud to support a veteran-owned American company like Cryptek.
Welcome to another episode of the Wingman podcast. I got my wingman, Josh Lancaster of Red Flats Retrievers, here with me to record. And this episode's gonna be about last days, the closing days of duck season. We had a phenomenal shoot in 2020, the end of 23-24, that was very unique. And we're gonna walk you through how that happened and how we kind of made it happen, honestly. Yep. And then we're going to get into the last two hunts from the 24-25 season. Yesterday was the last day of duck season for us here in Wyoming, and we didn't hunt. The conditions were
not ideal.
Not ideal. And honestly, we don't have a lot of birds anyway. And so we bagged it. We did close out on last Thursday with a banger of a hunt. It was a little bit unexpected. We were definitely blessed, as you put it. And it was phenomenal. So sit back, grab a beverage, and just enjoy another episode of the Wingmen podcast as we walk you through the end of season 23-24, which, check out the YouTube video for that, by the way. That's going to be out next, and will be up on the Wingmen YouTube channel. And this portion of that, the first portion of this podcast, talks about that particular hunt. So don't miss that. And then we get into the last two hunts that we did here. We're going to talk about dog work a little bit, about calling, about how we were able to capitalize and make the most out of some tough situations and tough conditions for our last two hunts of the 24-25 season. So hang in there and we'll walk you through it all. There were some distinct challenges that were presented on that hunt. As anybody that hunts the northern states, and I don't care if you're talking the western tier of northern states or the Midwest or any place, we get to get good numbers of birds, we need weather. And it's a fine line between too much weather and not enough weather. These last two seasons, last season, 2024 in particular, we had no weather. Every place was warm. And everybody was whining about not having enough birds. And then all of a sudden, for the last couple days before season, we had a deep cold snap. We're talking 20, 30 below, which our western rivers are they rebound pretty quickly from cold temps, but they do ice up, they do slush up to the point where they're unhuntable. And unless you have a dry land feed, which oftentimes requires weather during the day to get those birds off the river and moved into a field where you can actually hunt them during shooting light, you're stuck hunting pretty sketchy conditions. And that hole when I walked down, we had birds. We had thousands of birds. That was not the issue. The issue was there was no place that we could safely hunt those birds. The river had frozen into a lane that was about 10 feet wide. And it was not slush, but it was ice all the way to the middle, and it compressed the whole river into a 10-foot wide channel, and it was ripping.
Yep.
I mean, 8-foot tall waves in front of the blind. No safe place to put a dog in the water, especially, but you couldn't even put decoys out unless you're going to set an ice shelf. But we got warm weather. And we had to open up a spot, and Josh was just the benefactor of this. The person I should probably really have on this is the other guy in the video, Tyler. I went down with a tamping bar, and Tyler brought a chainsaw and a tamping bar, and we broke out a section of ice 200 yards long. And we were like, we just got to make an opening big enough that we feel safe, that we can get dogs in and out. Well, I don't know, hours and hours of work. We moved metric tons of ice, got a spot where I'm like, this will work. This is going to work. And that night it got warm.
Mm-hmm.
And we all got together and we went down there in the morning and everything changed.
Oh man, yeah, it's cool when you put in the work to make a spot huntable, not just for ourselves being safe, but for the dogs. I mean, the main reason you did all that work was for the dogs.
Yeah, I mean, we could have picked our shots and dropped birds on the ice, or when they swing over land and picked our shots, which we've done before down there. But you really want a safe place that a dog can get out of that flow, because that current will literally suck a dog right under the ice, and then they're gone.
Yep.
And you've just sacrificed a very valuable member of your family for a duck.
Exactly.
Or a goose.
Yep.
It's not worth it.
No.
Not worth it. We got down there. Walk us through what your initial impression was, because I told you we're going to try, but we're going to have to be really careful, because we opened up a spot that it's doable, but and to kind of frame this, we opened up a spot in front of the blind we could put decoys in, and the dogs could get in and out. But then we opened up more downstream where the riverbanks is less severe, and it's shallower.
Yep.
So a dog can get its feet on the river bottom and then jump out, because the water's only a foot deep.
Yep.
And especially a dog like Hondo with a big, powerful motor, he can overcome those situations a lot easier than my old dog, Mackinac, who was always afraid of the ice and didn't like it, had a strong self-preservation instinct. But Tyler and I opened it up about 200 yards down, because very rarely, if we're on it in that spot, very rarely do we have a bird make it more than 100 yards downriver before the dogs are in and out.
Yep.
Once in a great while, you get a cripple or something, but we're very careful of that. I was confident. I was like, yep, this is doable. Dogs can get the birds. They can jump out. They don't even have to swim. They can just jump out, and they're safe. That's the most important thing. But boy, did we have a surprise when we got down there.
Oh, man, it had opened up even more. It was like it always is, just open, safe. You know, for me going into it, not seeing it firsthand, I was in a way hesitant just because of the temps we had. You know, it's like you said a minute ago, it's a duck. And our dogs are part of our family.
Huge.
I mean, and so me going down, I was like, well, you know, we got a possibility that this isn't going to work in my mind. And if it didn't work, I'm not going to jeopardize my dog.
Right.
And so going down just was it was a breath of fresh air when we got down there, because it was just completely open.
It was wide
safe.
open.
And that's what, you know, when y'all put the work in, you know, you called me the day before, said, hey, can you get tomorrow off? We got to hunt. We don't know if it's going to work or not, but we're going to try it.
But the birds were there.
Exactly.
And it was like, this is going to be a slammer.
Yeah. And, you know, it's so cool when everything pans out, even though we had a chance that we weren't going to be able to hunt.
Yeah.
We were still going to give it our last day, last hunt.
Right.
But no, it was perfect. I had no hesitations to put Dara in the water.
Yep.
And both the dogs, Hondo and Dara, both did absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely. Yeah. When we walked down there and I got to the blind and went, where's all the ice?
Yeah.
Because it was literally everything that Tyler and I had done. We'd opened up a spot big enough that it's like, okay, we're good.
Yeah.
This is going to work. And then the river and the warmer temps at night, it stayed above 30 degrees all night long.
And it just moved.
And it moved everything. And it wasn't just because we had opened it up. It would have moved a lot of that anyway. But because we opened up a spot where the current could get in there, these rivers, if you give them a chance, these big western rivers will move ice. It's like a giant ice eater on a pond, where if you get a warm wind, the right temperatures, and then that river water, it wants to go back into its original flow. And it was unbelievable. There was, I think, one or two big chunks that had broken free that were just sitting there that you and I we moved into the river, and they floated off. But we opened it up and it was just like, wow.
And the birds wanted to be there.
Holy smokes, did they ever. And it couldn't have turned out any better.
No.
It couldn't have turned out any better. Just everything about it. The birds were fresh. We had fresh birds that they may be in a lot of these areas that we hunt year after year after year and continually. We do get the same birds from year to year. A mallard duck will live, 4 or 5 years. And over that span, they will continually visit the same places, and they will go off on a tangent too, as we've seen from the data from the 50 ducks data.
Yeah.
They'll go, but they will continue. Like, we have birds here in town on the irrigation canal that runs through town. I guarantee you, they're the exact same birds that come back to that spot every single year.
Yep.
They're safe and there's food. That's all they need. Food, water, and safety. And they've got it, and they live right in town. And when those town ducks show up every year and starting about December, I'm like, okay, we're going to have birds now. But we'll get a push, and that'll be it.
Yep.
And we usually get a pretty good-sized push when that first cold hits Canada and Montana. And then a lot of times that's all we have for birds until we get another big push. And when we get another big push, like we got on this day, they're fresh birds, man. They're naive. Even though they may be coming back to the same place for the 3rd or 4th time in their life, they haven't been there that year.
No, and they haven't. The big thing in the past years, a lot of outfitters in Canada weren't able to hunt, weren't able to have clients, so the birds weren't pressured. They weren't put to the test like they normally are during the regular season. Normally with Canada, then Montana, they are hunted hard.
Well, and
they're
there's
wary.
a portion in Montana up by Fort Peck Reservoir that in the past, up until last year, it's all Indian reservation.
Yep.
And it was huntable. And last year, the tribe decided no hunting. And those birds sat. And I got multiple reports from that area. It's like, dude, there are tens of thousands of mallards, ducks here that are just sitting here. They're not going anywhere. And they're not getting pressured. And they're not getting hunted. So the only thing that's going to move those birds is cover up their feed and freeze out their water.
Yep. Exactly.
And they have to move.
Yep.
And that's what happened. We got we got extreme cold. We're just coming off of a cold snap here, but it was nothing like that one.
And the last 2 years, our winters have been kind of poor.
Yeah.
We normally have pretty good snow in October.
Right.
We didn't have that this year.
No.
Or the year before. It's a very similar weather pattern from last year to this year.
Right.
But end of duck season was yesterday for us this year, and then we got our push. And that's typical of how duck season ends sometimes. But the coolest thing is we made it work on that hunt 2 years ago. And boy, it was just a joy. The fellowship we had, me, you, and Tyler,
phenomenal.
And the birds.
And we could have limited out 6 guys that day.
Oh man,
easily.
Yeah.
But for some reason, guys couldn't go. It was during the week, so guys couldn't go. So we put together the crew that we could, and we went down. And dude,
in our face,
what a blast!
Feet down.
Oh yeah.
The
total
ultimate
gentleman's hunt.
Oh, exactly. The total dream of a waterfowl duck mallard hunt. I mean, they did it absolutely perfect.
Yeah, it was like, I love singing the praises of Federal Premium Black Cloud, but we could have shot those birds with
slingshots
with 410s that day. It was like they were right in your face. And the nice thing about shooting a high quality load like that, like the Federal Premium stuff, is the birds were dead.
Yeah.
When they hit the water, they were dead. We didn't have to chase cripples.
No.
We didn't have to worry about it. They're just stone dead on the water. We're picking our shots. Everything's close, and then the loads just smack them.
Yeah.
And, the hide was good. The birds were fresh.
Dogs worked great.
You see in the video how good it was.
Yeah.
It would have been fun to have more guys on a day like that because we could have been down there longer.
Yeah.
And just.
If I remember right, we were done like 9:30.
It was fast.
It
was fast.
Wasn't anything major.
But so you laugh. It's like, well, yeah, you put in a lot of work for that for 45 minutes or an hour of shooting, and it's like, yeah. But if we wouldn't have had that shoot.
Exactly.
And so having the mindset of working with the conditions you're presented with and making the most of them, but pushing the envelope a little bit to go that extra mile because that work that we put in definitely paid dividends. There's no doubt about it.
Well, and that makes a great point of just being prepared, having your stuff ready for when you're going. So I'm going to recap a little bit of our first hunt this past season that we went and hunted the pond.
Yep.
And how I wasn't prepared. I threw it together last minute. We went, didn't have a good hide. We killed some birds, but, that wasn't ideal this coming season. I'm going to have hopefully a really good setup, good blind out there, have motion, have it all planned. Because what every hunt does for all of us is gets us prepared for the next.
I think so, Josh. I think that's a great way of looking at it, because if you're just going through the motions and doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, you're going to get the same exact results over and over again. If you go into a hunt with the mindset of, I'm going to pay attention, and I'm going to adapt on the fly as needed, and I'm going to learn from this. This hunt from this last day hunt in this video is something. It was a culmination for me of things that I had learned in previous years of hunting. Growing up where I grew up, we didn't hunt late season ducks. We didn't have the opportunity to.
Yeah.
With seasons closing in November, there usually weren't any ducks around at that point in time, so we didn't hunt a lot of late season stuff. And then when I moved to Wyoming 17 years ago and got into waterfowl in Wyoming, which is very limited opportunities, it's not like Michigan or where you can go anywhere and shoot ducks.
South Carolina. Yeah, it's not
like
the same.
It's not like that. And man, you got to make the most of what you have.
Yep.
And I was fortunate enough when I really got into a good waterfowl area in Wyoming, which are few and far between, just because of Wyoming's largely arid landscape.
Yeah.
Or mountains, and there's not a lot of waterfowl habitat here. And so I didn't know much of anything about hunting Wyoming and these western rivers until I moved to an area where I lived right there.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to fall in with an older gentleman who'd had the benefit of hunting ducks out here for 30 some years.
Yeah.
And man, did I learn everything from, you better have a rope with you, and I'm talking a roping rope that you use for roping cattle.
Yeah. Lasso.
You don't necessarily, I'm not good enough to throw a 30-foot loop, but I can get close and throw a loop over my dog and pull it just tight enough where they could pull against it and get out on the ice if they need to. He taught me that trick.
Yeah.
Saved my bacon on multiple occasions. Knowing how much ice is too much ice, knowing how much slush in the water is too much slush, right down to you might have to shift your mindset of being out there right at first light for shooting light. A lot of times when we get these cold temps and this river's nasty, the ducks don't fly until middle of the day.
Yeah.
During the warmest part of the day, they won't even fly. So you're out there, you're freezing, your dog's freezing. Yeah, you might crack a couple of birds right at first light, but then you're probably going to notice a significant lull.
Yeah.
And you're better off to go get some breakfast and go out about 9 or 10 o'clock.
Exactly.
Really.
Yeah.
We didn't have to do that on this day because the temps came back up. And we had a temperature swing that was like
-15
it
to
was
30.
negative. I think it was -30 at one point, if I remember correct. And then the day we hunted, the temps were in the 30s.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's a crazy huge temperature swing. And it worked.
Yeah.
It worked. It opened everything up. And then the rest of the season, it was the last day, but goose continued on, and we had open water to hunt. So you just never know. But if you just write it off and are like, I'm not going to go, you might be leaving cards on the table.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And that's, when you have the passion that we have for waterfowl, for dog work, it just, you don't write it off. You give it a shot, regardless of how good or bad it's going to be. And, we had that thought in our mind. It may not work. It may work. But we tried it out, and boy, it turned out to be a phenomenal day.
Oh, it was awesome.
I mean,
just awesome. And the highlight of it is, obviously, as you guys can see on the video, just the way the birds worked and decoyed, and because of the work that we put into it, it just made it just sweet, man.
No,
it
for
was
sure.
Just awesome.
Yeah.
Just awesome. There's so much that goes into the last day of season. There's so much that goes into late season waterfowl hunting, and especially that last day, that it's like you want everything to turn out good. This is the last time I'm going to be able to do this for an entire year, and I want it to be good. And we could not have ended the season on a better note.
Could not have asked for a better hunt for the last day of season.
Just incredible. Just incredible. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the recap of that last hunt from last year. That was the 2024 season, but let's get into the last hunt from this year. Yesterday was the last day of duck season.
Yep.
And we didn't hunt.
Nope, we didn't.
We didn't hunt. There was a couple of factors that went into that, but we'll stick with the weather.
Yes, 100%.
Being the number one factor, the reason why we didn't hunt. We had it slated. We were going to go. We did have a last day hunt. It was last Thursday.
Yep.
We went out, and it was another banger. It was awesome. We don't have the birds that we normally do at this time for various reasons. Number one being it's been warm.
Yeah.
We haven't had cold temps to move birds down out of Montana where we need them to come from. But we've had enough birds to pick away at.
Yeah.
Especially if we're careful with how we hunt them. And last Thursday, I told Josh, I was like, we're going to hunt. I'm not expecting anything.
He
anything
always says, I'm not expecting anything. No expectations on the table.
Because going back to the last day of 2024, which I knew if we could make a hole, we were going to slay the birds. I mean, it was a slam dunk if we could pull it off. It wasn't a question of if we were going to hunt last Thursday, which ended up being our last day.
Yeah.
It was, we're going to go, but we don't have much for birds. We'll see how it works. So we grabbed our buddy Greg.
Yep.
We all went down to the blind and filmed it, as is our custom. And that video you guys will see that video, and we'll release that video later. But dude, it was awesome. And it wasn't because we had a ton of birds.
No, not at all.
We had really warm weather, but we were staring down a freight train of cold we knew was coming.
Yeah.
Sub-zero temperatures that we knew was definitely going to impact the last weekend of season and probably the last day, which it did. Yesterday was the last day. We didn't hunt. The river is slush. I mean, solid slush. And the shelf ice isn't bad, but putting a dog in a 7-Eleven slushy is not ideal.
No.
From a logistics standpoint, it's difficult to even get decoys to stay in place. They're icing up. They're slushing up. They want to pull away. And then you knock birds down, and you got to send your dog into soup, ice soup. Okay, if you can pull them out and get them on a dry spot in front of a heater, the dog can handle that.
Yeah.
Cold weather dogs that are used to retrieving in cold conditions can handle a little bit of that. But repeated dunkings in an ice bath is hard on a dog.
Yeah, 100%.
Really hard on a dog. And just swimming through slush that's a whole other ball of wax.
It just adds another layer that they have to then fight through.
Yeah, it's not ideal.
No, it's not at
ideal.
all.
And so we kind of kept tabs on it over the weekend, and I called you, I don't know, Monday, I think it was, and I was like, we're not going to hunt the last day.
Yep.
I couldn't find a dry land feed because guys are listening to this going, why don't you just hunt a cornfield? I couldn't find one.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of birds. The birds we do have been here a long time, and they're really cagey.
Yep.
Which is going to go into how we approached the hunt last Thursday, which was effectively our last duck hunt of 24-25 season.
Yep.
I couldn't find a feed.
Yeah. And
I found one cornfield a week ago that they were hitting intermittently and just couldn't pin it down as far as just if the birds were actually going to be using it. So we opted to not hunt, knowing that, okay, duck season's over. We still got almost a month of goose season still ahead of us. So that I'm looking forward to that. But back to last Thursday, not high expectations whatsoever. And again, you can say what you want, but I was like, we don't have the birds, you know, and the birds we do have are super cagey. They're stale. This is going to be hard. And we started out kind of slow.
Mm-hmm.
Killed a bird here, killed a bird there. There's a few flying. In my mind, I'm like, okay, yeah, we're going to have a good time.
Yeah.
Probably not going to get a video out of this because we're just not going to end up with the birds. Well, what happened?
Boy, I'd say it was another one of those hunts that we had expectations of it not being well. And then I'm going to say this, the Lord blessed us.
Oh, man.
Blessed us abundantly. And we're just fellowshipping, me, you, Greg, and the cameraman, and just having a ball. And all of a sudden, it's onesie-twosies just keep on coming.
We shot. There was one 4-pack that had 2 hens, 2 drakes, and we killed both the drakes out of that.
Yeah.
That was the only group of ducks that we saw a couple of groups, but they were flying high. They didn't want anything to do with where we were at.
Weren't even giving us a look.
But we kept
just chipping away.
One here.
Yep.
I don't think we ever shot a pair.
No. Other than that first,
we had those 2 drakes down, and that was it.
Yeah.
And we weren't. Yeah, it was like all of a sudden I looked down at the bench, and we got a stack of ducks lined up on the bench, and I'm going, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Guys, we only need 3 more birds, and we're limited out. We're gonna have our 15 drake mallards.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, this might happen.
Yeah.
We might walk out of here with a 3-man.
Yeah.
We ended up with 15 beautiful drake mallards.
Yeah.
2 golden eye drakes, which here and there, if I'm going to hunt divers, I'm going to hunt divers.
Oh,
when I'm shooting mallards, I want to shoot mallards.
Yeah.
You're much more of an opportunist than I am. We did end up taking 3 geese.
Yep.
Which in that spot is always kind of a bonus.
Yeah.
There's geese there, but that particular spot is tight.
Yeah.
And it's hard to decoy geese in there.
Yeah.
Singles and pairs will do it.
Yeah.
Larger groups, they're pretty leery of that.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, we killed a couple of geese. Like I said, that's a bonus. But it was like all of a sudden, I looked down, and we got 15 drake mallards.
Yeah.
And I went, how did that happen? It was like, just picking away.
You know, and that's honestly, so being from back east, and our hunting is different. You got 45 minutes and you're done hunting. Right. Normally back home with wood ducks or anything else,
they don't fly in the middle of the day.
No, and so for us on that day, last Thursday, it was just, we literally just hung out.
Yeah,
and just picked the birds away. We got done 10:30.
It was about 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
By the time when we were actually limited, we savored the moment. We hung out, and we were like, "This is wow." We were blessed today.
Oh man, yeah.
But it was like, I don't know, and we
and some of the birds worked.
And you're going to see on the video, we did shoot some birds like feet down, landed in the decoys, but because it's late in the season, because we didn't have, we haven't had a fresh push of birds in all season.
Yeah.
We were a little more liberal with our shot selection. You know, if birds, I don't feel like we ever sky busted.
No.
But we killed multiple birds that were 40 yards up.
Yep.
You know, and they're giving us a look. You know, they're not just flying by. We're not pass shooting necessarily. They're giving us a look, but they're probably not going to finish.
Correct.
And it doesn't matter just because of the stale birds. They're really leery. They're really leery of decoys. They're really leery of calling.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to get into the calling side of it because it did make a difference on multiple birds that we killed.
Yeah.
Multiple birds. And the strategy that was kind of in my head and that we've talked through since then. But it was like, holy smokes, man. We're done.
Yeah. No, it was pretty awesome.
We're done.
You know, one other thing I would like to just back up. You made a point Thursday morning of not just throwing the decoys to put them in the spread.
Right.
You know, one of the things we had hunted Tuesday at a different spot, and we just tossed decoys like we always do, getting ready. Now we're still in freezing temperatures.
It's below freezing, but it's not below zero.
Correct.
Right.
And so one thing with that helped us huge, I believe.
Yep.
Those decoys weren't shining, you know, as they weren't glowing like a flashlight in the water for ducks to see. They still had their color when the light hit them. It was normal. It wasn't a sheen over across them.
They weren't iced up.
Correct.
And on Tuesday, you're right. We just threw blocks out.
Yeah.
And then the sun came up, and when we shot birds, right, when the sun was low, we shot birds because it just looks like dull blocks, just looks like dull ducks. There's no color popping on them or anything. Yep. But when that sun gets high, which Thursday the sun was bright.
Yes, it was.
And it hits those decoys and the colors pop, which I honestly feel like out here in particular, I would rather have a sunny, windy day than an overcast, calm day out here or an overcast day with wind. Wind is obviously your friend because it makes the birds have to actually work a certain way and they have to get in there. It makes them do specific things other than just willy-nilly fly around. Yeah. But bright sunshine creates shadows for your hide. You're hidden way better in bright sunshine if you're not sitting in the sun. Yep. And it makes your decoys pop. Those birds can see that color from a really long ways away. And we were it's one of those deals where you and Greg and Tyler, the guys I hunt with the most, you're all good duck hunters. You're all good waterfowlers. You know lots of things. And so I'm always choosing my words when it comes to, hey, we need to do this. But I knew with those single-digit temps, well, I guess it was like 8-9 degrees that morning, and it warmed up into the low 20s. I knew that if we just threw those blocks out, they were going to get covered in ice. Yeah. And when the sun hit them, they were going to shine. And they were not going to look real. And I knew that we had to do everything right in order to kill birds that day. And so we individually placed decoys in the spread, set them, didn't throw them, we set them in the water. And they're going to get a little ice on them from water splashing on them and stuff, but they're not coated in it.
Correct.
And I think it made a huge difference.
Oh, 100% agree with you. And I mean, that's why I brought it up, because it was something that you have taken from your past hunting and brought it to that last hunt and made it just work just perfect. Yep. I mean, and that's where I go back of when we were talking about setups and that we're prepared. Every time we go out, we need to remember things so that at the end of the year, for future years, we're in single digits again. Yep. Hey, let's just place them. Let's not throw them. You know, it's just little things like that for all of us.
It takes a little bit longer, but not really. I mean, we were still set up in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Now, if you're deploying massive numbers of blocks, you see the videos of guys that are hunting in Arkansas or wherever, and they're hunting permanent spreads that get placed once and maybe tweaked a little, but never get pulled until season's over. And guys are out there with power washers in the front of their boats, power washing decoys off because they can't. Your spread has to look real. Yeah. And you got to do whatever you need to do. If you're hunting a dryland set for geese that's been set the night before, or even as temps have gone up, maybe your decoys got frost all over them, or they get snow on them. You got to knock that snow off. Oh, yeah. You can use a big torch and melt the snow off them, or you can knock it off or brush them off. And it gets more laborious the more decoys you have out. Oh, yeah. But it makes a difference between killing birds and not killing birds, too.
Oh, 100%.
The other thing was calling. Everybody has their cadence, their rhythm, their habit of how they call, whether it's ducks or geese. Oh, yeah. And we can get stuck in that cadence and be not talking to the birds the way that we should be.
100%.
And I have noticed out here from years and years of doing this that on these western rivers, unless you're hunting a spot where you're observing birds feeding, their heads are down, they're in a riffle, they're grubbing invertebrates off the bottom, or they're eating Russian olives that are on the banks. You look at these birds on your scout and listen to them, And the majority of these birds out here are doing dry land feeding, and they're doing it at night.
Yep.
Even under black conditions with no moon or little moon, they're still feeding it largely at night. They're safe. They don't get shot at night. They know that. When you drive past a feed, a dry field feed, whether it's barley or corn or whatever it might be this time of year, you're going to hear that, that chatter, that feeding chatter. Ducks on the ground feeding, ducks in the air chattering. On the river, it's more of a loaf, where if you observe those birds, they're just chilling.
Yeah.
Some of them will be feeding, dabbling a little bit, but they're not really getting after it as far as feed goes. They're just loafing. And if you sit back, you'll hear that 5-note, or and you'll hear the drakes, weet, weet. But it's all that type of calling. And so when you start throwing that feeding chuckle into your cadence, into your calling sequence, in your cadence, I have noticed, and it was very obvious on Thursday. Oh, actually, I go back to a couple of hunts before that, I noticed it, where whenever I threw a chuckle in, ducks would lose interest. They wouldn't really flare. They just was like, yep, that's not real. It's not a sound that they hear in that environment when they're on the river. Maybe a little. And so we talked about it in the blind, like, let's dial our calling way, way back. Single quacks, maybe 3-4 quacks in a row, but just contented quacks, and then call them on the corners. Yep. The old rule of thumb. When they're going away and they start swinging, and shut up. Yep. As long as those birds turning or coming at you, we're not calling. We're not feeding chuckle. We're not doing any of that stuff. And when we stopped that, we started decoying birds on Thursday. It was like a light switch. Yeah. There was one bird in particular. I don't know what I was doing. You and Greg, who are both excellent duck callers, were working this one drake in particular, and he'd made a high loop, and he was going away, and you're like, Todd, give him that Helms hail call. And I just kind of whiny and some drawn out some kind of pleading notes, and I couldn't see the bird, but you guys both went, holy crap, here he comes. It was like, I'll let you tell it.
It was our last bird of the hunt, and me and him were working it. He'd given us a look once or twice, never came down, but I told you to hit the high ball, and literally just right at the end of it, it just poof, turned, and I'm like, oh man. And like you said, you couldn't see it, and it came back around the other side, and I said, hit him again, and you hit him again, and it just finished him. He just turned, cupped over, came right in, and I don't think you saw him until I said to kill it.
Yep.
And it was right over the decoys.
Yep. Actually, that bird landed in the decoys.
That's right. Yep.
He landed right in the decoys, finished exactly how you want him to, and you're like, kill him. And I was just taking my time, just enjoying it, and stood up, and dude, it was over. Yeah. But it was just a classic example of you have to be paying attention to what those birds want to hear.
Well, and you have to adapt.
Exactly.
Because the late season, birds are a lot more wary. So you got to really pay attention with that. I am a cadence guy. I always have been, and I always start off with a squeaky feeder call, just getting after it, kind of like an Arkansas squeal with the feeder, just to get it a little bit different of a tone.
Sure.
But, it's all of us have to adapt. No different with goose hunting or anything else. We adapt to what the actual animal that we're after. We adapt to what they're liking. Yep. And if they're not liking something, we stop doing it.
And we were doing no calling when birds were above us.
Yep.
That was the other thing. And that's across the board in late season, whether it's ducks or geese. Do not call those birds when they're directly overhead.
Because they're going to look right at you.
They're going to look right down into your hide. And even if you're hidden well, which that blind is it's a great hide. It's got shade. They do not see you as long as you're not rubbernecking and, But what they'll do, because all animals pinpoint sound so much better than people do. Whether if you're a predator guy, you know how exactly what I'm talking about. Elk calling. That elk, you can make one cow call, and that bull will know exactly where you are.
Yep.
And he'll come right to the spot. Waterfowl are no different.
No.
Turkeys, another one.
Yep.
if you're calling from your hide at birds that are directly over you and you're sitting a little ways from your spread, they're going to pinpoint that sound. And guys, I know that guys are going to listen to this and be like, no way. I'm telling you, it is the truth. And especially geese, because the whole battle between duck guys and goose guys, and duck guys are like, oh, no. Geese are smarter.
Oh, yeah.
Geese are smarter. They live longer. They have more life experiences than ducks do. They tend to be very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Have a high fidelity to spots year after year after year after year. And they get smart.
Oh, yeah.
And they see, the calling's coming from that pile of brush or grass over there. That's not real. Yeah. Ducks do the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Where they're like, that's not quite right. So when we talk about calling ducks on the corners, they're out there.
Yeah.
They're 100 yards, 200, 300 yards out, and they're flying away from you, and they're hitting that imaginary corner where you need to turn them, and that's where that and as soon as you get the body language that you want,
shut up.
Yep. Stop. You've made the right sound. All you can do from there is screw it up.
Yeah.
Let the bird work. And holy smokes, Thursday was a
awesome
master class of that. And it was just 3 guys that have a lot of duck hunting experience and love it and love spending time together in the blind and work well together.
Yeah.
Realizing what was going on, what was happening. Probably going to be the last hunt. It was definitely in my head that Thursday was going to be our last hunt, even though I had hopes of Tuesday, the actual last day. But knowing what conditions we had coming, I'm like, we may not be able to hunt.
Hey guys, this episode of the Wingmen Podcast is brought to you by High Mountain Seasonings. The folks down at High Mountain Seasonings in Riverton, Wyoming have had my business since before I started working at Eastmans and way before Wingmen was even an idea in my head. I've been making homemade jerky and sausage and you name it, snack and sticks with their kits for a really, really long time. Having the pleasure a couple years ago to go down and take a factory tour and film that and do a duck hunt with one of the guys from the company, Brian Tucker, was a pleasure. They have such a cool operation down there in Riverton, Wyoming, and to think that their product from little old Riverton spreads out all over the country and into Canada is mind-blowing. I know they do business internationally as well, but it's incredible to me. I can go in so many different places, from the local grocery store to any of the big box sporting goods stores, and find that product. I can go in, I can grab a box, I can take it home, and I can, within 48 hours or 72 hours, I can have some of the best goose jerky known to man. I can put that on a plate, and you wouldn't know it's goose. I mean, a lot of guys be like, wow, this is amazing venison jerky. And it's like, hey, thanks. Yeah, you're eating goose. Like, what? This is goose? Thank you, High Mountain Seasonings. It's not just jerky kits, though, that those guys do. They have a whole ton of products. So I would recommend that you go over to highmountainjerky.com and check out the full assortment of products that they've got down there in Riverton, Wyoming.
Couldn't ask for anything better.
I mean, there was a hooting and hollering after that last bird. It was like we won the Super Bowl, It was like such a great feeling.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the other thing about Thursday, dog work. I mean,
yes.
You had casted Hondo across the river for a goose. Just everything came together. And, for us with dogs, and anybody out there is going to understand exactly what I'm saying when I say this, but when you see your dog do what you've put time in, train them to do,
right,
it just is another piece to the puzzle that is just an accomplishment.
Yep.
I mean, going from the first duck hunt with Jasper this year.
Dude, I want to talk about that because Jasper is a pup. I mean, he's a little over a year old.
Yeah.
His first season in the blind.
Yep.
And you have drilled down into the obedience with that dog. He is probably the steadiest dog I've ever seen. He doesn't break.
No.
And where my fur missile, as long as I'm not the one shooting, he's pretty solid.
Yes, 100%.
But if I'm shooting, he's gone.
Yeah.
He hears the safety click off and he is gone.
Yes.
And it's kind of like I hate that because I want him to be steady. But on the other hand, hunting our western rivers, a dog that is getting on birds quick isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No, it's not.
Because it doesn't give the bird a chance to get away. But being able to control him is super important. And that's one thing about Hondo, all of the work that you've helped me put into him and that I did with him as a puppy, with Cornerstone, all that work is paying dividends in that even if he breaks, I can most of the time stop him or control him while he's away from me.
Yeah.
I can stop him with a whistle or stop him with a no and then direct him. Like if he's headed towards some danger, I can usually stop that dog.
Oh, yeah.
I would say I'm very confident that I'm like, nope, hit the brakes, and he will.
Yeah.
Couple of times between our Tuesday hunt and our Thursday hunt, I had to handle him a little bit where he wasn't sure where a bird went down.
Yeah.
And I had to handle him. There was that teal.
That was awesome.
Dude, you killed a green winged teal, and it fell. I knew it fell in the water because I heard it splat.
Yeah.
But it was right on the opposite bank.
Yeah.
And it was right in the sun glare.
Nobody could see.
Nobody could see. We're looking right into the sun on that particular setup. And I sent Hondo across the river, and he went, got him to the bank, and he turned left. And I stopped him, and thanks in large part to the new whistle that you gave me. Josh gave me a louder whistle because he hates my little quiet British whistle. But anyway, I got a loud one now. Stopped Hondo, and I'm over. And he went over, and we've had this conversation before about let your dog hunt. Don't overhandle him.
Yep.
Let him hunt, especially a dog like Hondo who has the experience. He knows.
Oh, yeah.
And if you give him time, he's going to find that bird. And I just needed to get him in the general area because we didn't know where that teal was.
No.
We knew about where it was.
Yeah.
And he hunted, but he was up on the bank. And it's really hard. It's easy for me to cast him away.
Yep.
It's much harder to bring him in. Much harder. And he hit the bank, and I directed him, and he was hunting. And there was a couple times. I stopped him, I think, one or two more times and kind of got him going over, which gave the scent from that duck time to pool and kind of waft.
Yep.
And all of a sudden,
he started getting birdie.
all of a sudden he was like, there's something here. It's right here. And he found it.
Yeah.
And it was right there.
Exactly.
But we couldn't see it.
No.
He couldn't see it. There was no visual to that, even though it's 60 yards away.
Yeah.
We can't see it. And so putting in all of that time to put some handle into a dog, but having the experience and trusting your dog enough to just let them do their thing.
Yeah.
I can't smell that bird. He can.
Yeah.
Let that nose work,
Exactly.
and that's where you're getting with Jasper. I will never forget because Tuesday morning we were set up in a really cool little spot. We kind of freelanced a spot. We did some scouting, and I knew there were birds further downriver in a spot that we don't ever hunt.
Yeah.
And I got looking at it, I'm like, I think we can hunt that. And holy smokes, the birds that wanted in there really wanted in there.
yeah.
We could have shot them with 410s easily.
Yep.
And we trusted our Cryptek camo, and it did the job. We had to build a little bit of a structure to kind of break us up a little bit, but you were on the upstream end, and I was on the downstream end, and then we had Dan and Brandon in the middle doing the shooting, and then you and I got in after that. But we were handling dogs, which I love doing.
Oh, man.
And first bird got down, and you're like, go ahead. And I sent Hondo, and it's easy mop up. You don't have to swim, right?
No.
Gets it, brings it back. Jasper's up. And the first hunt of the year, Jasper didn't retrieve a bird. It was really hard conditions for a young dog. Second time we hunted, he was struggling a little bit, like finding a bird in the decoys and figuring stuff. He's learning. He's figuring it out. And I was like, okay. And I didn't even think anything of it. And you went, Jasper. And that dog launched. I mean, I've never seen a dog do a wheelie. He was on two legs his hind legs going through that that water
Yep.
right to the bird.
Yep.
Bam, got it and came back. You just posted a video on Red Flats Retrievers Instagram page yesterday or a couple days ago. You were training when it was, 14, 15 below.
Yes.
And you were pile training
Exactly.
in a pile of birds, and it wasn't 20 yards.
No, it was about 15, 10, 15
Boop,
yards.
boop,
Yep.
boop,
boop, boop.
boop, boop. Just little ones.
Yep.
Little ones. But it's building that confidence in him that when I tell you to go, you need to go.
Exactly.
You need to get the bird and you need to come back.
Yep.
And I saw that on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And that dog, there was a level of confidence where it was like, okay, now you got a hunting dog.
Yep.
Now you got a duck dog.
Exactly.
Because you've nailed the steadiness and the obedience with him. And now it's building the go. Now it's building the experience.
Yep.
And having the two dogs to work together is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to put up with Hondo breaking a little bit whenever I pick up the gun, but
But that's part of it. And the coolest thing about that is we know what we need to work on.
right.
And every hunt with decoy setting, with dogs, with our own shooting, there's always something to learn, always something to then develop to go for a better dog, better shooter, better spread, better hide. There's always an opportunity to learn, always an opportunity just to grow, and not just in waterfowl, but spiritually as well. Fellowshipping with one another.
Yep.
I mean, you were saying we were cackling and having a good time, but we're challenging ourselves, challenging each other with our dogs.
Right.
You hold me back because I can get tempered and get fired up with
The hunt I was talking about earlier where I could see the frustration level building in you because Jasper was not doing what you wanted him to do.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've been there. I've had the young dog that didn't do what you wanted him to do.
Yeah.
And it's like, that, and especially in that scenario, because the retrievers were easy.
Oh yeah,
They're literally the bird's right there. It's
Exactly.
dead in,
yeah,
and he's all over it, all around it, but he's not finding it. I mean, he's stepping on it a couple of times, and he's just not recognizing it as what he needs to retrieve.
exactly.
That comes with experience.
Yep.
And I saw that on Tuesday.
Yeah.
He was spectacular.
Yeah.
Every time you sent him, boom, out, got a bird, come back.
Yep.
So kudos to you. Way to be patient. Way to continue with the process. That's awesome. And it's a good lesson for me as I move into a new era, as Hondo continues to grow, probably add another dog to the fleet, and I'll have to do this. I'll have to start over and do the same exact things. But, man, what a season. It was short. It felt like it was just like on us.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden we had nothing. And all of a sudden we got birds and we had a couple of hunts and it was like, okay, that's our season.
Yep.
And now, if anybody from the Wyoming Game and Fish is listening to this, please run our duck season through the end of January. Take the early season stuff out of September or early October, or make our split longer in November and give us to the end of the month, ending us on the 21st of January. Every single year this happens. We get a cold snap, we get birds, and we have like one more day to hunt.
Yep.
And then we have all these birds that we can't shoot.
Yep.
Run us to the last possible date where the federal cutoff line is. Please, please, please restructure the Wyoming dates. Take the days off from the early side and put them on the back end of the season. I would be
Or just make the split
really
longer.
happy with that.
I
Do
mean,
something.
Yeah.
But we need more opportunity at the end of the season when we actually have birds. So
I agree.
there's my dos pesos on that. Ugh, anyway, yeah, looking forward to goose now.
Yeah.
It's on to geese. Not like we don't hunt geese, but I like to focus on ducks while duck season is in.
Yep.
And then we got honkers now, and the river's going to open up, and we'll be able to hunt them on loafs, and we'll be able to hunt them in fields, and yeah, it'll be fun. And that brings its own set of challenges for dogs at the same time.
It does, and that's so. Yesterday, that video I posted yesterday, I did layout blinds for the dogs, and I'm working on their steadiness.
Mm-hmm.
A shot, or a bumper hits the ground, making sure they're staying in their blinds. It's you want to set each and every dog up for success,
Right.
And so that's what I'm transitioning and getting ready for goose season. So
Yeah, and the retrieving on geese is largely, at least the way I hunt them. My dog Hondo usually is in a position where he really can't see what's going on. I've got him hidden in a dog blind, like next to us, or maybe he's tucked in an A-frame, or I don't like hunting out of layout blinds anymore. At 46 years old, I'm slow to get up out of a layout blind. It's not comfortable to hunt out of, and I will do it if the situation demands. You'll get there, brother.
I know.
But anymore, I'm like, I don't enjoy hunting out of a layout blind. I'd much rather have my feet under me, be able to stand up in an A-frame. And honestly, the A-frame, for now, the birds will get used to them, but for now, they're wickedly effective.
Yeah.
You can hide them in plain sight in the middle of a field and still shoot birds out of an A-frame. Being able to stand up and pick your birds, you shoot better when you got your feet under you. And I've hunted for so many years out of a layout blind. Like I said, I'll still do it. It's just not as enjoyable for me. And so in a layout, my dog's behind me in a dog blind, and he can see what's going on. In an A-frame, he's either in the A-frame with me or he's around the backside on the upwind side, so the birds are decoying. They can't see him. He can't see what's going on.
Yeah.
So it's all blind retrieves. Mm-hmm. And if you're doing it right, your retrieves are all 15 to 30 yards.
Yep.
On days when the birds don't want to cooperate or you sail something, your dog has to be able to go.
Yeah.
And go through a decoy spread and just go.
Yep.
And that's a challenge for a lot of dogs.
And that comes back to what we did over the summer with the ladder drill.
Right.
And just pushing your dog, pile work, ladder drill, getting that dog to actually listen to what you are telling them to do and actually follow it.
Yep.
So
my pile work this week looked a little different. Last night in particular, I split a bunch of wood for my wood stove.
Yeah.
And I just threw it over the fence and into a pile.
Yep.
And the kids had wrestling practice. They were going here and going there. So I was like, well, this is all on me. And so I just made a big pile of it. And Hondo's had since last Thursday, he hasn't done anything.
Yeah.
And so he's got a ton of energy.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, pile work it is. And he brought me every stick of that wood.
Awesome.
And I don't know, a couple 100 pounds of firewood.
Yeah.
And it was just place him at heel and line him.
Yeah.
And he's still popping on me,
mm-hmm.
but by the end, he's figured out, oh, okay.
Yeah.
In his mind, he should be, when I send him on something, he's looking for a bird.
Yep.
Not a piece of wood.
Correct.
But I'm like, no, I want you to get the wood.
Yep.
It's good because it creates adaptability, right?
Exactly.
But it's just a little, it was 15 yards.
Yeah.
Boop, boop, boop. Bring me the wood. You
Yep.
know, fetch it up. Well, he was so amped up, he started barking. I'd send him and he'd bark. You know, and it was play. It's training, but it's play at the same time in the backyard because it's wood. He's having fun. He's burning a little energy. I'm having fun.
Yep.
We're just having a good time together.
Yeah.
But by the end, Hondo, and get a piece of wood, bring it back. Get a piece of wood. He's got to pick a piece of wood out of the pile and bring it to me.
Yeah.
And I'd take it and I'd put it on the porch. Take it, put it on the porch. And we did that for 15 minutes.
Yeah. Well, it's no different than our last hunt last Thursday. Mm-hmm. So we were getting ready to do pile picks and, just have stuff ready. So I want to bring this, one reason I'm bringing this up is because it doesn't matter where or what work you do on training. We're done with the hunt. Dogs wore out. It's been fetching all day, but there's a pile of ducks in front of me. And I have my dog. I'm like, you know what? What's going to take 10 minutes, 5 minutes here? I'm going to send him. So Jasper then picked up 10 more birds. And pile work.
Contact.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be anything major. Yesterday, it was freezing cold, blowing wind. I was out working them, and that's all it did. It's just little things. The little things come so... Just the little things in life, little things with dogs, it comes so far when you actually get everything put together.
You get on a hunt.
Exactly.
And it all comes together.
Yeah.
And these dogs are smart, man.
Oh, man.
And they, just because it looks different, fetching wood's not fetching a bird, it's the same motion.
Yes.
It's the same repetition.
Yep.
And it builds those habits. The firewood's a great way to, and I've obviously looked him over and make sure he didn't have any splinters in his tongue or anything like that, but he's just picking it up, bringing it to me. But there's a hold on that firewood because it's heavy and it's big, chunks like this.
You're getting him necked up for goose season.
Very similar to a goose.
Exactly. Yeah.
He's got a retrieving geese is much more difficult for most dogs than ducks. There's big wings, there's big necks, they're bigger. You got a dog has to hold on to a goose more firmly to be able to carry it. They have to raise their head up and carry it higher. A duck for a dog like Hondo is child's play.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy. A goose, he's got to grab it just right and hold it. You know, I hunted for years with a couple of guys with 100-pound Labradors.
Yeah.
Big strapping males. A goose was no big deal.
Oh, no. Not at all.
I mean, they snatch him and run back, and it was no big deal. For a normal-sized dog in like ours, a goose, they got to hold it right.
Yeah.
Or they're going to step it on wings, and they're going to drop it, and it's like there's a learning curve to it for a dog.
Yeah.
Especially on land. In water, all they got to do is get a hold of it.
Yeah.
And the goose is floating, and then they just swim it back. And then getting it to you, there's usually a little bit of a repositioning. And being patient with a dog in that can be hard.
Well, so like Tuesday, it was Jasper's first goose retrieve.
Yeah.
And, you know, I have been working. I have a goose bumper, basically, big old.
But it doesn't have wings.
But it doesn't have wings. And so I sent him on it, and, I mean, just right off the rip, just hump, boom, brings it back, gets to the bank, drops it.
Yep.
But, you know, he picked it back up and then handed it to hand. You know, and that is the coolest thing when you put in the work and it comes to fruition. Just it's amazing when.
Okay, so we need to
cut or stop.
Yeah, we need to wrap it up.
Okay.
Guys, thank you for listening to this episode of the Wingmen Podcast. Thank you. Huge shout out to all of our partners at Federal, at Weatherby, at Onyx, at Cryptech, at Leupold. You guys are phenomenal. The High Mountain guys down in Riverton, High Mountain Seasonings, you guys make us, you create the ability to do this and to bring this to the listeners. If you're in the market for anything waterfowl related, gun, ammo, clothes, you know, any of that stuff, check out these companies. They do a wonderful job supporting us, and they create phenomenal products that I wholeheartedly believe in and I enjoy using. Hats off to you guys out there, so thank you for that. And that's a wrap for duck season for us.
Yep.
And we'll bring you more. I hope you enjoyed this. My wingman, Josh Lancaster, Red Flats Retrievers. If you're in the market for a dog, check out everything Josh has got going on. He'll have you covered with a really great dog. So, until next time, we'll see you in the field.